The man arrived at the small roadside restaurant just before sunset. His driver stopped the black car near the entrance, but the man asked him to wait outside. He wanted this moment to be simple. He stepped out slowly, helping his young son from the back seat. The boy moved carefully, his body stiff and unsteady. One of his legs did not support him well, and his hands shook when he tried to balance himself. The father held him close, steady, and calm, as if he had done this 1,000 times before. To anyone watching, they looked like an ordinary father and son. No guards, no attention. No signs of the man's wealth. His suit was simple, his watch hidden under his sleeve. He had learned long ago that money invited eyes, and today he did not want to be seen as someone important. Today, he was just a father trying to give his son a normal evening. Inside, the restaurant smelled of fried food and warm bread. The place was busy, but not loud. Families sat at worn tables. A few truck drivers laughed near the window. The floor had marks that never fully came clean, no matter how often it was mopped. The father liked places like this. They felt honest. He guided his son to a corner table, away from the crowd. Sitting down was always the hardest part. The boy's body resisted the movement, and his face tightened with effort. The father stayed patient, offering quiet words, waiting until the boy was settled. When it was done, the boy let out a small breath, as if he had just finished a long race. The father noticed the stares. Some were quick and curious. Some were full of pity. A few looked away too fast, embarrassed. He had seen it all before. Every time they went out, it was the same. He did not blame people. Many did not know how to react. Still, each look felt like a small cut. The boy looked down at the table, his fingers tracing the edge again and again. He avoided eye contact with anyone nearby. Crowded places made him nervous. Sounds felt louder to him. Movements felt closer. The father watched his son carefully, ready to leave if things became too much. A waitress approached with 2 menus. She looked young but tired. Her shoes were worn, and her apron had stains that never quite faded. Still, her eyes were kind. She smiled, not the forced kind used for tips, but a gentle one. "Take your time," she said softly, placing the menus down. Her voice was calm, like she understood that rushing was not welcome here. The father nodded in thanks. The boy did not look up. As the waitress walked away, the father noticed how the boy's hands were shaking more than usual. He reached across the table and held them. "We can leave if you want," he whispered. The boy shook his head slightly. He wanted to stay. He always wanted to stay. He just needed time. A few minutes passed. The noise of plates and voices filled the room. The boy tried to open the menu, but struggled to hold it steady. The paper bent and slipped from his grip. It fell to the floor. The boy froze. Moments like this were hard. His face grew red, his breathing quick. The father leaned forward, ready to help, but before he could move, someone else did. The same waitress had noticed. She walked over slowly, knelt down, and picked up the menu. She did not rush. She did not make a big deal out of it. She placed it gently back on the table and smiled at the boy. "It's okay," she said quietly. "Those menus fall all the time. They're sneaky." The boy looked at her, surprised. He hesitated, then gave the smallest smile. The father watched closely. Something about the way she spoke was different. She wasn't careful in a way that felt uncomfortable. She was natural. The waitress noticed the boy's hands and adjusted the menu so it lay flat. "Would it help if I read some of it to you?" she asked. The boy glanced at his father. The father nodded. She pointed slowly at the pictures, explaining each item in simple words. She spoke directly to the boy, not over him, not around him. She waited when he needed time. When he struggled to answer, She stayed patient. Other customers noticed. Some watched with curiosity, some with warmth. No one interrupted. The boy finally chose his meal. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but clear. The waitress listened closely, as if every word mattered. "That's a good choice," she said. "One of my favorites." When she walked away, the boy sat a little taller. The father felt something shift inside his chest. He had spent years hiring the best doctors, the best helpers, the best schools. But this moment, this simple kindness, had done something none of them ever had. His son felt seen. While waiting for the food, the boy's movements became restless. His arms tightened, and his foot tapped the floor unevenly. The noise in the room grew louder for him. The waitress noticed again. She returned with 2 glasses of water. Instead of placing them quickly and leaving, she stayed. She placed 1 glass closer to the boy and held it steady as he reached for it. "Slow is fine," she said. The boy nodded, focusing hard. With effort, he took a small sip. A little water spilled down his chin. He flinched, embarrassed. "No problem," the waitress said, handing him a napkin without comment. "Happens to me all the time." The boy laughed softly. The father felt his eyes burn. He turned his face slightly, pretending to study the room. When the food arrived, the boy struggled with the utensils. His hands did not move the way he wanted them to. The father reached forward to help, but the waitress gently stepped in first. "May I?" she asked, looking at the father. He hesitated, then nodded. She adjusted the plate, cut the food into smaller pieces, and placed the fork in a way that made it easier to hold. She did not rush. She did not sigh. She stayed calm, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. The boy took his first bite on his own. The father watched in silence. He did not interrupt. He did not explain. He simply observed. Around them, life went on. People ate. People talked. But at that small corner table, something quiet and powerful was happening. The waitress stayed nearby, checking in without hovering. Each time the boy looked overwhelmed, she noticed before anyone else. Each time, she responded with patience, not pity. The father realized she did not know who he was. She did not know about the company he owned, the buildings with his name on them, the wealth that could change her life in an instant. She was kind because that was who she was. When the meal ended, the boy leaned back, tired but calm. His shoulders were relaxed. His breathing was steady. He looked at his father and smiled fully, without fear. That smile stayed with the father. As they prepared to leave, the waitress returned with the bill. The father thanked her quietly. She smiled and said she was glad they came in. The boy lifted his hand and waved at her. She waved back. The father took one last look around the small restaurant before stepping outside. The sky had turned deep orange, the day fading into night. He helped his son into the car, his mind heavy with thought. He did not speak during the ride home. He did not need to. That evening, he realized something important. A stranger had given his son comfort without asking for anything in return. And that was only the beginning. The next day, the father could not stop thinking about the waitress. Her kindness had stayed with him, floating through his mind like a quiet echo. He kept remembering how naturally she had treated his son, not like someone to be pitied, but like a child who deserved patience, care, and respect. Every detail came back clearly, the way she knelt down to his son's level, the soft voice that never rushed him, the gentle hands adjusting the menu, even the small jokes she had made that drew a tiny laugh from him. The boy, meanwhile, seemed lighter than usual that morning. He moved a little more freely, smiled a little more often. The father noticed it, but could not fully explain why. The memory of her calmness, her patience, had a strange, almost magical effect on his son. He ate breakfast slowly but happily, humming quietly to himself. The father watched him, realizing how rare it was to see him this relaxed. He knew it was the influence of the waitress's small acts from yesterday. It had made the boy feel safe. Later, the father found himself thinking about her life. Who was she? Why did she care so naturally? He could see her living a hard life, working long hours, probably carrying responsibilities that no one else noticed. She had a warmth that could not be taught, a patience that did not come from instruction manuals or money. That was what had touched him so deeply. Curiosity grew into a need. He wanted to know her, to understand her world. Not in the way that wealth often intrudes into people's lives, but in a quiet, respectful way. He decided he would return to the restaurant that evening, not to interfere, not to show who he was, but to see if her kindness was real, consistent, genuine. When he arrived that evening, the restaurant had the same welcoming smell, the same warmth of a simple, honest place. The father led his son to the same corner table. The boy's small movements had become smoother in the past day, but he still needed support. The father helped him into the chair, quietly adjusting the cushion and holding his hand until he felt stable. The boy looked around and whispered, "It's okay, Dad. I remember." The waitress noticed them immediately, her expression welcoming, calm, and unassuming. She remembered the boy from yesterday and smiled softly. "Good evening," she said. "Nice to see you again." The father nodded, but did not speak much. He wanted to see her natural way of caring, without interference. The boy's eyes brightened at her familiar voice, and the tension in his shoulders eased. She handed him the menu, and instead of just watching, she knelt beside him. Her eyes met his, gentle but steady. "Take your time," she said. "We can go as slow as you." Need. They began the same dance as the day before, only today the boy was more confident. He pointed at items on the menu and asked questions, and she answered patiently. Her attention was fully on him, her smile never forced. Each moment she spent with him seemed to chip away the layers of anxiety he usually carried in public. The father observed quietly. He had never seen anyone connect with his son this way. Therapists, caregivers, friends, none of them had been able to create this small bubble of calm. She was not doing anything extraordinary in the usual sense. She was simply present, fully aware, patient, and kind. After a few minutes, she noticed the father's quiet presence. She gave a polite nod, but did not act differently. She treated him as she would any parent, with respect, without any assumptions. He found this remarkable. People often acted differently around wealth, often trying to impress or manipulate. Not her. She did not know who he was, and that made her kindness pure, untainted. As the meal arrived, the boy struggled again with utensils. She noticed instantly, moving close without intruding. She adjusted his plate, demonstrated the best way to hold the fork, and encouraged him gently. The boy's confidence grew with every small act, every quiet reassurance. For the first time in months, he finished his meal without frustration, smiling up at her proudly. The father's heart swelled with emotion. He realized that kindness did not have to be grand or expensive. It could be small, patient, and consistent. It could transform a moment into something unforgettable. Throughout the evening, the waitress continued to check on them, always attentive, never overbearing. She asked small questions about the boy's preferences and needs, listening intently to each answer. Her gestures were calm, her voice steady. Each time the boy looked uneasy or overwhelmed, she responded immediately, never judgmentally, never impatiently. The father marveled at her ability to anticipate his son's needs without knowing much about him. During a quiet moment, the boy laughed genuinely at one of her jokes. It was the first time the father had heard that sound in weeks. He leaned back, letting himself watch without interfering. The happiness in his son's eyes was the reward, the validation of something that no money could buy. When the meal ended, the waitress returned to clear the table. She offered a friendly word to both father and son, making sure they had everything they needed. The boy waved goodbye to her, and she waved back, smiling warmly. The father stayed quiet, but inside he was thinking deeply. Driving home, the father realized how much this waitress had impacted not just his son, but him as well. Her simple acts of patience, attention, and care reminded him of what truly mattered. He had spent his life accumulating wealth and status, believing that those were the measures of success. Yet here, in a small roadside restaurant, a stranger had shown him the true value of compassion. That evening, he made a quiet promise to himself. He would not forget her. He would find a way to honor her kindness, not in a way that would embarrass or overwhelm her, but in a manner that reflected the impact she had on his family. He would learn her story. He would understand her world. He would make sure that her goodness did not go unnoticed. Meanwhile, the boy slept peacefully that night, resting better than he had in months. The father watched him, reflecting on how a single act of kindness could ripple through lives in ways no one anticipated. He knew this was just the beginning of a journey that would change more than one life, and perhaps even transform the way he himself saw the world. For the father, the waitress had become more than a kind stranger. She had become a symbol of hope, patience, and humanity. And in that quiet, unassuming restaurant, a bond had begun, unseen but powerful. One that would grow and shape their lives in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The following week, the father found himself thinking more and more about the waitress. He knew he could not just watch from afar anymore. He wanted to understand her world, not out of curiosity alone, but because he felt a deep respect for her kindness. He wondered what her life was like beyond the restaurant, what struggles she carried quietly, and how someone could remain so patient and compassionate despite those struggles. One evening, after dropping his son off for his therapy session, he decided to return to the restaurant again. This time, he arrived a little earlier than usual, hoping to observe her in a different light. The restaurant was quieter than before, with only a few tables occupied. The waitress moved through the room with her usual grace, checking on customers, refilling drinks, and ensuring everything ran smoothly. She smiled at those who needed it and offered quick, efficient service to the regulars. The father watched closely, noting her energy and attention. There was no pretense, no act of performance. Every gesture was genuine. As the evening went on, he noticed something else. She had an air of responsibility that went beyond the restaurant. When a delivery arrived, she immediately checked the list, managed a small problem with a missing item, and then returned to her section without complaint. When a customer left a mess behind, she cleaned it quietly, without drawing attention to herself. It was clear she was used to carrying burdens without seeking praise. Her kindness extended to everyone she encountered, not selectively, and yet it had a special resonance when she was with his son. The father reflected on his own life. Wealth had given him comfort, influence, and power, but it had also isolated him. He had assistants, managers, and helpers for almost everything, but he realized how few people in his life acted from pure kindness. The waitress's actions were free of calculation, free of expectation. It was humility and care at its simplest and strongest. Curiosity slowly led to concern. The father began to notice small details that revealed more about her life. Her shoes were worn, her apron frayed, her hands slightly rough. He guessed that she probably lived with a family member who relied on her, or maybe she had financial responsibilities that kept her from a more comfortable life. She carried herself with strength, but he could see the strain that long hours and endless work placed on her. One evening, when the restaurant was almost empty, he found the courage to speak to her quietly. He introduced himself, careful not to reveal too much about his wealth. He simply said he had noticed her kindness toward his son, and he wanted to thank her sincerely. She smiled, a little surprised, but polite. "It's nothing," she said softly. "I just try to do my job well, especially when it comes to kids." The father shook his head. "It's more than that. You've made a real difference in his life. I've never seen him so calm and happy in a public place. You treated him like he mattered, and that matters more than you know." Her eyes widened slightly, and she looked down at her hands. I don't know what to say. I just do what feels right." The father nodded, understanding completely. He knew that she did not expect recognition or reward. She was kind because she had to be, because her heart guided her, not because she wanted something in return. Over the next few visits, he learned more about her life. He discovered that she worked multiple jobs to support a younger sibling who was still in school. She had taken on responsibilities far beyond her age. Her days started before sunrise and ended long after the restaurant closed. Yet despite exhaustion, she never let it show to the customers. She carried a quiet strength that allowed her to meet life's challenges with grace. The father began to see how her kindness was a product of her own experiences. She had faced difficulties that could have hardened her heart, but instead they had shaped her into someone who could empathize deeply. He realized that her patience with his son was not limited to him alone. She had learned, through her own struggles, how to respond to hardship with calmness and care. One evening, he observed her comforting another child at the restaurant. The child had spilled a drink, and instead of scolding or ignoring the situation, she knelt down, reassured the child, and helped clean up the mess with a smile. The father watched quietly, feeling a sense of awe. The same woman who had brought calm to his son's chaotic moments was capable of spreading that same warmth to anyone around her. That night, driving home, he reflected on everything he had learned. He thought about how rare it was to meet someone whose actions came from the heart, whose life, despite its challenges, still had room for generosity and care. He felt a quiet determination to find a way to honor her, to show that her kindness had meaning beyond the walls of the small restaurant. He also thought about the boy. He realized that the waitress's influence was already having a ripple effect. The boy seemed more confident, more willing to try things on his own. He laughed more easily and spoke more clearly. The father knew that her simple acts of patience and attention were teaching his son something no medicine or therapy could, that he was worthy of care, love, and respect. Over the next several days, the father began to plan quietly. He would not act impulsively, and he would not interfere in a way that could embarrass or overwhelm her. He wanted any help or recognition he offered to be thoughtful, considerate, and meaningful. He wanted to create an opportunity for her to have stability, to ease some of the burdens she carried, without diminishing her dignity or independence. Meanwhile, the waitress continued her work as usual. She remained unaware of the father's growing admiration and respect. She treated each customer the same, approached every challenge with patience, and continued to care for his son without hesitation. For her, it was simply the right thing to do that the father watched and learned, realizing that the true value of her actions could not be measured in money or status. It was in the impact she had on those she touched, the quiet change she brought to the lives of others. Her influence was subtle but profound, and he knew that she deserved recognition in a way that matched her character honest, meaningful, and transformative. As he planned his next steps, he felt a mixture of anticipation and humility. He understood that changing her life would require sensitivity and care, but he was determined. He wanted to ensure that her kindness, which had already changed his son's life, would not go unnoticed or unrewarded. He wanted her to know that the world could reflect the same goodness she had shown others, and that her life could be transformed by the same compassion she had extended so freely. And so, the father waited, observing, learning, and preparing. He knew the moment would come when he could act, when he could offer help in a way that honored her spirit. Until then, he continued to watch with quiet admiration, witnessing the remarkable strength and warmth of a woman whose life, though full of challenges, radiated kindness and humanity in every action she took. Days passed, and the father continued to visit the restaurant quietly. Each time, he watched the waitress handle her responsibilities with the same calmness and care, not just toward his son, but to everyone around her. It became clear to him that her kindness was consistent, not a one-time gesture. She remained patient and gentle, no matter how busy or tired she seemed. The father realized that he had found someone truly extraordinary, someone whose actions spoke louder than words ever could. He decided it was time to test her kindness in a subtle way. He wanted to see if her patience and care extended beyond the familiar comfort of his son. One evening, he arranged a situation that would require her attention without alarming her. He brought along a young neighbor of his son, a child he knew could be fussy and difficult in public settings. He did not tell the waitress anything about the plan. She would need to respond naturally. As she had with his son, the restaurant was lively when they arrived, but the father guided his son and the neighbor to a corner table. As they settled in, the neighbor immediately began fidgeting, knocking over a glass and complaining about the chair being uncomfortable. The father watched quietly from a distance, feeling a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. He wanted the waitress's reaction to be genuine, to show that her kindness was not selective. It did not take long for her to notice. She approached the table with her usual calm smile, kneeling down to the children's level. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, her voice full of warmth. "Let's make sure you're comfortable." The neighbor hesitated at first, uncertain about this new presence. But the waitress did not rush, did not force interaction. She adjusted the chair, picked up the fallen glass, and spoke gently, asking questions that made the child feel seen. Slowly, the child's body relaxed. The father could hardly believe it. Her patience and empathy had worked again, even on a child she had never met before. Throughout the meal, she continued to attend to both children with the same attention she had shown his son. She guided them through the menu, helped them with utensils, and made small jokes that encouraged smiles. The father observed closely, impressed by how naturally she handled the situation. It was not perfection or performance. It was genuine care, uncalculated and unforced. When the meal ended, the neighbor's parents came to pick them up. The waitress spoke to them with the same respect and patience, ensuring the children were comfortable and happy. The father felt a deep sense of relief and admiration. Her kindness was not limited to his son. It extended to anyone who needed it, without hesitation or expectation. After this test, the father realized he had all the confirmation he needed. She was remarkable, consistent, and pure in her compassion. He began to consider the next step, approaching her in a meaningful way, offering help without making her feel obligated or uncomfortable. He wanted to honor her dignity and the life she had worked so hard to build, not undermine it. Over the next several days, he reflected on what she needed. He thought about her long hours, the responsibilities she carried outside the restaurant, and the fatigue that must weigh on her each day. He thought about how her actions had transformed his son, given him confidence and calm in ways no therapy could. He realized that her influence extended far beyond the small space of the restaurant. He decided to plan a careful approach. He would speak to her privately, away from the busy restaurant, and explain the impact she had made. He would offer help in a way that respected her independence and dignity. It was important to him that she felt supported, not patronized. The father also spent time observing her outside of work. He learned about her daily routines, the challenges she faced, and the responsibilities she carried. He understood that any gesture of support needed to be meaningful and thoughtful, tailored to her life and needs. He wanted her to feel that her hard work and kindness mattered in a world that often overlooked such qualities. When the day arrived, he asked her to step outside briefly, pretending it was just to discuss a simple question about the menu. Once they were away from the restaurant, he began to speak, his voice calm and sincere. He explained how he had noticed her patience and care, not just with his son, but with everyone she interacted with. He described the impact her kindness had made on his family, and how deeply it had touched him personally. The waitress listened quietly, her eyes wide with surprise. She did not speak at first, overwhelmed by the unexpected acknowledgement. The father continued, making it clear that he was not offering empty praise or superficial compliments. He wanted her to understand that her actions had tangible effects, that her patience, empathy, and care had transformed lives. When he finished, he offered help in a way that was considerate and thoughtful. He did not overwhelm her with grand gestures. Instead, he suggested opportunities that could ease her burdens, whether through educational support, better work conditions, or assistance with her family responsibilities. He emphasized that this offer came from respect and admiration, not obligation. The waitress remained quiet for a moment, absorbing the information. Her surprise gradually softened into gratitude. She thanked him sincerely, her voice calm but emotional. She explained that she had never expected recognition, and that her actions were simply what she felt was right. The father nodded, understanding completely. He respected her humility and wanted to honor it. Over the following weeks, he began to implement his plan. He provided discreet support, ensuring that she felt empowered rather than indebted. He introduced resources, offered assistance, and opened opportunities that could positively impact her life. Throughout the process, he remained attentive, ensuring that each step preserved her dignity and independence. The results were remarkable. The waitress experienced less stress, more stability, and a renewed sense of hope. She was able to manage her responsibilities more effectively, and the weight of her daily challenges became lighter. Her confidence grew, and her natural kindness continued to shine, now supported by practical help that allowed her to thrive. The father observed these changes with quiet satisfaction. He realized that true generosity was not measured by money alone, but by understanding, respect, and thoughtful action. By recognizing her worth and providing meaningful support, he had not only transformed her life, but also strengthened the bond that had begun quietly in the restaurant months earlier. Through this journey, he also reflected on his own growth. He understood that wealth could provide comfort and security, but it could not replace the value of genuine human connection. By honoring her kindness and character, he had learned the true meaning of generosity, humility, and compassion. As the days went on, the father, the waitress, and his son shared a quiet understanding, a bond that went beyond words. It was a connection built on trust, respect, and the profound impact of simple, consistent kindness. And in that bond, lives were changed in ways that would last far beyond the walls of the small restaurant, creating ripples of hope, growth, and genuine human connection. It was a quiet afternoon when the father decided it was time to reveal his identity fully to the waitress. He had been careful in every interaction, observing her kindness, learning about her life, and providing discreet support that she barely noticed. But now, he felt it was time to be completely honest. She deserved to know the truth about the impact she had made on his family and how he intended to honor her. He arranged a meeting outside the restaurant, choosing a neutral place where she would not feel overwhelmed. As she arrived, she looked curious but calm. She had no idea what awaited her, only that the father seemed serious yet kind. He began by recounting the first day he had seen her with his son. He described how she had knelt to his son's level, how she had spoken to him with patience and warmth, and how she had helped him feel safe for the first time in weeks. The waitress listened quietly, her eyes widening slightly as memories of those small moments came back to her. "I want you to know," he said gently, "that what you did that day changed more than just his life. It changed mine, too. I had never realized how much a simple act of kindness could matter. Your patience, your attention, your care, they showed me something I had forgotten." The waitress shifted slightly, humbled and uncertain. She had never expected recognition. Her work had always been about doing what was right, not seeking praise. But as she listened to his words, she felt a quiet warmth spread through her, a sense of her efforts being truly seen. The father continued, explaining how he had observed her over the weeks and how her consistent kindness had impressed him deeply. He shared what he had learned about her life, the long hours, the responsibilities she carried, and the challenges she faced without complaint. He wanted her to understand that he saw not only her actions, but the strength and character behind them. "You've done more than I could ever ask," he said. "You've made my son feel safe, confident, and happy. You've reminded me of the value of patience, empathy, and care. And I want to honor that." For a long moment, she remained silent. She was touched, overwhelmed, and unsure of how to respond. Her life had been one of quiet effort and unnoticed kindness. She had never imagined that someone would see it, appreciate it, and want to reward it in such a thoughtful way. The father then carefully explained the help he wanted to offer. It was not a simple gift of money or a lavish offer. He wanted to provide opportunities that could ease her burdens and support her independence. He spoke of educational support, job stability, and assistance with her family responsibilities. Every suggestion was tailored to her life, chosen to make a real difference without imposing or embarrassing her. The waitress listened intently, taking in every word. She was cautious, of course, wary of favors and expectations. But as he spoke with sincerity, she began to understand that this was different. There was no hidden agenda, no need to repay him. It was simply a recognition of her character and a desire to support someone who had made a meaningful impact on others. Tears filled her eyes, though she quickly blinked them away. She thanked him, her voice soft but full of emotion. I never expected this," she said. "I just wanted to do my job, to help when I could. I didn't know it mattered this much." "It mattered more than you know," he replied. "And it still matters. That is why I wanted you to know the truth. You deserve to see the impact of your kindness." From that day forward, her life began to change. The father arranged support that allowed her to reduce her work hours at the restaurant while maintaining her income. He helped her access opportunities for further education, giving her the tools to pursue her dreams. He provided assistance for her family responsibilities, lightening the load she had carried alone for so long. Every step was planned carefully to respect her independence and dignity. With this support, she felt a new sense of freedom. She was able to focus on her personal growth, pursue her interests, and spend more meaningful time with her loved ones. Her confidence grew, and she carried herself with a quiet pride that had been hidden under years of struggle. The kindness she had shown others continued, now strengthened by the stability and hope she had gained. Meanwhile, the father watched with quiet satisfaction. He knew that true generosity was not measured by money alone, but by understanding, respect, and thoughtful action. By recognizing her worth and providing meaningful support, he had not only transformed her life, but also reinforced the bond that had begun months earlier in the small restaurant. The boy continued to thrive as well. His confidence, patience, and happiness grew steadily. The father noticed subtle changes. He spoke more freely, laughed more often, and approached new experiences with curiosity rather than fear. The waitress's influence had left an indelible mark, teaching him the value of empathy, patience, and connection. Her kindness had become a part of his life, shaping him in ways no therapy or school could dot in the months that followed. The relationship between the family and the waitress remained strong but unobtrusive. They shared quiet moments, small gestures of care, and mutual respect. She never demanded recognition or gratitude, and the father never imposed. It was a partnership of understanding, built on respect, compassion, and the shared experience of human connection. The story spread quietly, though not through fame or media. People who witnessed her kindness saw the changes in the family and began to understand the power of simple, consistent acts of care. The waitress became an example in her community of how empathy and patience could create profound impact. The father learned that wealth could provide opportunity, but it was character and heart that created lasting change. Years later, the father would reflect on the journey with a quiet sense of awe. He realized that one small act of kindness, the way the waitress had held his son, guided him, and treated him with dignity, had transformed lives in ways he could never have predicted. It had changed his son, the waitress, and himself. It had created a ripple effect of hope, compassion, and human connection that extended far beyond that. Small restaurant The waitress continued to live her life with grace and warmth, strengthened by the support she had received and the recognition of her character. She never let success or assistance change who she was. Her kindness remained genuine, her patience unwavering, and her heart open to those around her. The father, the son, and the waitress shared a quiet understanding, a bond built on trust, respect, and gratitude. They knew that the greatest wealth in life was not money or status, but the power of compassion, empathy, and genuine human connection. And in that understanding, all of their lives were forever changed, filled with hope, joy, and the quiet certainty that simple acts of kindness could truly transform the world.